So it all began a couple of years ago while I was still in university. I decided to start this mindfulness exercise of sorts where I would spend time chalking out my future plans while also trying to get to know myself better. So I decided I'd spend the next couple of weeks or days at Hyde Park. I'd find myself this cozy little spot under a tree with my box of snacks, a bottle of water, a notebook and pen. Earphones in while staring out at the sky, tuning up, really concentrating on my thoughts. Safe to say, the one key word that kept coming back to me was sustainability. Day in and out, this word would just sort of linger in my head. So I decided to think about it thoroughly, and that's when I realized sustainability, or sustainable fashion in this case, is such a broad term and that can often confuse people. And so to me, defining sustainability became important. The fact that it stands on three main pillars of environmental, social, and economical. So I knew for me, the only way to find job satisfaction back then, or happiness in this case, was to positively and sustainably impact these three pillars. To work, but with a purpose. So after pages and pages of notes and hours spent under a tree, the idea of Core was born, a sustainable design house that I run today. But now, let's get to the reality of things. The climate is changing right in front of our eyes, and we've chosen to ignore the fact that the Earth's temperature has risen by 1 degree in the last 60 to 90 years. We are losing millions of species, loss of biodiversity, melting ice caps, corals that are bleaching, drastic climatic destructions happening as I speak to you today. From the floods in Kodagu to the fires in Australia, humans are responsible for how and why the world is changing. We as a kind have acted for centuries without truly understanding our impact on the environment. And this industry that I'm a part of, which is masked by glitz and glamour, is increasingly contributing to what I call the destruction of our planet. So how do we continue to grow crops for materials and fabrics used in fashion without further cutting down our rainforests, an essential part of our ecosystem, what I call the lungs of our planet? That's the real question. Well, in labs, for example, did you know that you could genetically modify the structure of mushrooms, mycelium, to produce a sustainable alternative to leather? Or with pineapples that are naturally found in abundance in Philippines and require no chemical processes to produce this fabric? Understanding the problems with fashion starts with understanding how these crops are grown first. Well, in Scandinavian and European countries like Netherlands, Sweden, Denmark, they have shown us for years that we can continue to enjoy the things that we love as long as we learn to consume mindfully. And well, more importantly, produce mindfully. So what are these biofabrics and plant-based textiles that you hear of but don't know much about? Designers, scientists, and eco-entrepreneurs like myself are working to produce alternatives to fossil fuel and petroleum-based textiles like nylons, synthetics, and polyesters that have flooded our markets and wardrobes since the fast fashion revolution. We look for textiles made with renewable raw materials and waste from other industries. For example, rose petals. With a silk-like texture, the cellulose fiber is made from waste rose petals. Or orange, on the other hand, which is made from orange peels and skins that's collected from the food industry. With a small niche of us working together to bring to the forefront how plant-based and natural textiles can bring back our rainforests, a large chunk still chooses the easier route. Why? I constantly ask myself, why do people choose to ignore the fact that their actions have an impact on our planet? We have lost more than 50% of our rainforests in the last 90 years. Businesses, both big and small, in India and globally, have for eons looked to make profits in the quickest and easiest way, not in the most efficient way. What if our factories, warehouses, studios, stores, and offices, for example, used renewable energy sources like wind, solar, geothermal, and water? What if we moved away from embellishing our garments with tiny plastics and sequins that land up in oceans and destroy marine life, and used what I recently discovered is human diamonds, crystals made from human sweat? What if couture was made from dissolvable materials that disappeared after you were done wearing them? These are not dreams. This is possible in the real world. This is the reality of how people are working to fix the broken system that today we call fashion. Behind the pretty clothes and magazine editorials and extravagant fashion shows, there is a tremendous cost to the environment and its people. Soon we will be left with no rainforests. Summers will be obsolete with temperatures soaring so high you wouldn't want to leave your home. Winters so cold a tiny little fire just won't cut it. That's the thing, you see. We can't address the problem just at its root. We must start there, but the worries continue through the supply chain. The clothes you buy from fast fashion brands or big box retailers generate 60 billion square meters of waste cuttings that are swept off factory floors and thrown into the garbage per year. On the other hand, you have local, sustainable, slow fashion brands that work tirelessly towards generating zero waste patterns and designs, or finding ways in which fabrics can be upcycled. While zero waste patterns require a lot more time, what's the point of being a creator if you lack creativity? And if those numbers don't shake you up, it doesn't stop there. Clothes and textiles are the #1 source of microplastics found in the ocean, accounting for 34.8% of the global total. The production of fiber is responsible for 18% and 25% of insecticide and pesticide use respectively. The usage of these harmful chemicals in the long run causes land to degrade. That's when governments intervene and give permission to large conglomerates and companies to deforest, harming local biodiversities, local communities, and contributing enormously to climate change. All this, and your garment hasn't even been stitched or shipped to you yet. Think of all the pollution, carbon, and greenhouse gases released into the air. Think of all the energy consumed within the smallest part of our supply chain. Toxic dyes, hours of running machinery, depleting non-renewable scarce resources. All this so you can pay a low price for a t-shirt you wear a couple of times before it's out of trend and thrown into overflowing landfills. Take a moment. I know how overwhelming an abundance of information can be. Take a breath, because this is just the beginning. I knew I had strong values I wanted to bring into the industry. First things first was a textile cleanup, knowing which fabrics we're going to concentrate on, finding our USP, and how we must keep our supply chain clean, honest, transparent, and circular. Dwelling in all this research, I found that we can actually use plant-based and natural textiles for almost everything we wanted to make. And so the discovery into interesting fibers such as rose petals, soybean protein, corn, bamboo, aloe vera, the list really goes on, as I spoke to you a little earlier about how we work with those materials. This wasn't only interesting but also extremely important because we have now found a solution to what is one of the most wasteful parts of our supply chain. Now, working with these fabrics wasn't easy to begin with, to understand how they're made and if we can truly say that they're chemical-free and biodegradable, or whether they're a less water-intensive crop than cotton and linen that is usually used as a sustainable alternative in the market. Greenwash. I decided it was imperative for me to look into how these crops were grown, whether they used natural or chemical fertilizers, and how well were these farmers paid. My discovery was quite interesting. The farmers we work with today are ethically paid and are so open to technological development that will improve sustainability standards, efficiency in terms of land used, and water consumed. Working with experts on land while looking for future-centric solutions can help conscious businesses scale in a sustainable way, a trouble we've seen most companies have. Growth tends to shift our supply chain towards being more linear rather than circular, and this is because of rising demands, constant change of trends, and this high consumption culture brought to you by the social media age. So how do we as businesses remain sustainable while also successful was the question we kept pondering over while penning down our roadmap. Start small, think circular. The idea isn't just to make and sell, it was to understand how we can implement eco-friendly practices throughout the supply chain without hindering our growth. From the crops to the process of turning these crops into usable fibers, using these fibers to then create designs that focus on zero waste patterns, and how we can then use waste cuttings and incorporate them as design elements in our collections or product listings, instead of letting them get thrown into the garbage. It doesn't end there. We make the product and we sell it, but what happens after that? While most sustainable and luxury brands recommend dry clean only as a way of caring for things you own, kind of defeats the purpose in my opinion. We all know the amount of chemicals released in a single dry clean. These chemicals don't only harm the environment but also have severe toxic effects on the people who dry clean them for you. So our focus was to develop these fabrics in a way that could be gently washed with little to no impact on the environment. What do you do with your garments once you're done with them? We believe in offering upcycling programs where you bring your old and used garments to us and we rework with our team of designers to bring you new products that you can use from old products, therefore improving its life cycle. Now you can set them free once you're done with them, guilt-free, knowing that they're completely biodegradable and that you've truly given them a full life. Unlike what you would have done with synthetics and polyesters that we usually find in our homes and wardrobes. Being a crusader for sustainability means you think of it in full circle, not just where it benefits you most. Which brings me to fast fashion brands and my concerns with greenwashing. Using the term sustainability as a marketing gimmick to make people believe that they're making a better choice. We all know fast fashion brands that claim that they're made from eco-friendly or conscious materials in many ways. This, to me, is troublesome. While efforts are definitely appreciated, being sustainable also means being transparent. And as I mentioned on earlier, it also means looking out for the social and economical impact of your practices. If large conglomerates continue to push profits to the most privileged sector of fashion, and the disparity between the rich and the poor continues to grow, while this multi-trillion-dollar industry that exchanges billions of dollars on a daily basis is feeding the rich and the privileged and stripping the poor of their talent and craftsmanship. We look at brands and how they market themselves. We look at labels and are often eager to own them just because of the tag that comes with it. What if we were eager to own pieces that we could connect with real humans, pieces that come from people you know, people who are ethically paid, organizations that invest a large chunk of their profits in uplifting these people to ensure that local economies grow, local standards of living improve. Instead, what we've seen is decades of humans' desires driven by profit and short-sighted goals. Rather than looking at the bigger picture, improving the standard of living of these people we work with that are underprivileged will give us the ability to educate and empower an enormous population, to bring them out of poverty and give them access to clean energy, education, and healthcare, all of which are essential to stop the growing climate crisis. What is the bigger picture? A clean future driven by renewable energy sources, biofabrics in the future of fashion, developing leather made out of mushrooms, apples, and pineapples. everyday essentials that you probably find in your kitchen or backyard. The bigger picture is understanding that small choices, when made by millions of people, positively impacts the environment, giving it time and space to recover centuries of human abuse. We have seen it happen before with Chernobyl. Earth is sturdier than you think it is. Because we grew too fast too soon, it somewhere lost its balance. And because we haven't stopped to rethink the way we consume, it continues to die as we continue to consume. Steering away from chemical dyes that run into our water streams, that are poisoning marine life and finding its way back into our food, causing diseases like cancer. Yes, I urge you to think of everything you consume in full circle. Where does it come from? Where does it go? Improving economic conditions and standard of living for our daily wage workers so that we as a country and as a planet can work towards bridging the gap and improving social standards, therefore inevitably improving profits. The bigger picture is when you zoom out and look at the whole world as a big mind map with connecting dots. How can we be successful and mindful at the same time? How can we scale sustainably and improve our profits without harming our planet? Your actions have the power to clean up this mess that we have created. Think of the world you live in today. Think of all the things you consume: news, fashion, food, social media. Think of how a simple no can save thousands of liters of water. While we must pressurize political systems to force companies to change the way they operate through legislation, we as consumers must also do what we can in our space, in our environment, with our decisions. You have the power to stop the world from dying. All you have to do is change the way you consume. That's all for today, folks. Thank you for listening to me.